In a world shrouded in shadows and in secrets, where the unexplained meets the unthinkable, one podcast dares to explore the dark corners of reality. Welcome to the Paranormal Misfit Podcast, where mysteries unfold, conspiracies are revealed, and the supernatural beckons. Join me, Chrissy, as I delve into the realms of horror, paranormal phenomena, cults, cryptids, conspiracies, secret societies, and the darkest parts of history. Each episode is a descent into the depths of darkness where truth is stranger than fiction. From haunted histories to unsolved mysteries, Paranormal Misfit Podcast is your portal to the mysterious and the darkness. Don't miss out on a journey of a lifetime. Subscribe to the Paranormal Misfit Podcast and let the mysteries unfold.
Welcome to the D.E.A.D podcast, where I discuss all things spooky and weird. I'm Desi, and today I'll be talking about Donkey Lady Bridge. Let's get started. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing tonight? I hope y'all are doing good. So tonight, I don't know if y'all saw on Instagram, but I put up a poll to ask y'all what the next episode should be about, and the majority chose an urban legend, Texas urban legend, and I am drinking a wine tonight. It's a sweet wine, and I like it. It is by Stella Rosa, and it is called Black. It says it is a semi-sweet wine, which I think it's definitely sweet. A little borderline too sweet, but it's really good. And I'm drinking that out of my Skull wine glass. So I will post a picture of that. And I ran out of Spooky Texas t-shirts. I should probably look for like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre one or something. That would be cool. But I am wearing my Friday the 13th one, and it has Friday the 13th at the top with Jason's hockey mask in red with blood splatter, and then at the bottom it says Camp Crystal Lake. That is what I'm wearing, and I will post a picture of that as well. Let's get started. San Antonio is home to many ghost stories and spooky folk tales, and Donkey Lady Bridge is one of the more popular urban legends and easily one of the creepiest. The bridge is away from all of the hustle and bustle of San Antonio in the outskirts. It crosses over the Medina River and Elm Creek on the south side of San Antonio, approximately 4 miles north of Loop 1604 at the corner of Applewhite and Jet Road. This bridge has a varied historic past, but all the origins and accounts lead to the same conclusion. The bridge is haunted by a spectral being that resembles a disfigured woman and resembling a donkey. There are several versions of how she came to be this way, and here are a few of them. A lady whose house, which was near a bridge over a small creek, was burned. She was a recluse and was asleep when the fire began. She herself was severely burned. Fingers and toes fused together to appear hoof-like, and a face so disfigured and sagging as to appear similar to that of a donkey or a horse. She is also said to have fallen while running from the blazing house. The bones of her hands and feet so burnt and brittle that they broke, leaving stumps as limbs. Afterwards, it is said she went completely insane, lived under the bridge, and roamed the woods on the south side of San Antonio. The second version, in the 1950s, a farming family living outside of San Antonio met a horrific end. The farmer set fire to his home, murdered his children, and left his wife horribly disfigured. He was never seen again after the flames spread throughout their home. Her fingers were melted down to stumps, creating hoof-like appendages, and the skin on her face was charred and gave her face an elongated, donkey-like appearance. They say that as a result of the extreme betrayal and her heartbreaking loss, the woman went totally insane. She hid herself away and stayed in the rural areas of Bexar County. She hid away from the world, unable to deal with her horrible pain and even more horrendous appearance. While she stayed to herself in the depths of the forest, it did not stop her from attacking anyone who came too close. Now, in her death, she is said to haunt Elm Creek and torment those who try to cross. The final version: years ago, most agree sometime in the mid-1800s, a settler woman lived near the banks of Elm Creek with her husband and 2 children. The couple was barely scratching out a living from farming the stingy South Texas soil and raising a few head of livestock. One day, the son of a wealthy San Antonio merchant came riding onto or near their property. Somehow, the young man came into contact with a horse or mule belonging to the pioneer family. The young man, the story goes, teased the animal and hit it with a stick. The poor animal retaliated in the only way it knew how, and bit the merchant's son. Enraged, the young man began to beat the animal even more severely than before. The poor creature's cries reached the ears of the pioneer couple, and they quickly rushed to the scene. It became obvious to the couple that their animal, no doubt vital to their livelihood, was about to be beaten to death. The couple began throwing rocks at their animal's assailant and pelted him several times. They did not realize this young man was the son of an important man in town. The young man hurled a string of expletives at the couple as he retreated, but swore he would get even with them. That night, a party of men, led by the wealthy merchant and his son, stealthily approached the young family's cabin and set fire to it with torches. The heavily armed men refused to allow anyone inside the cabin to leave. Desperate, the man of the house attempted to make a break for it, in the hopes that his wife and children could escape while he distracted their attackers. Alas, he was gunned down almost immediately upon setting foot outside the cabin. The screams of the woman and her children as they burned alive were heard up and down the creek for over a mile. Just as the mob was sure that their unholy task was complete, a figure engulfed in flames smashed through what was left of one of the cabin windows and staggered toward the stunned and now terrified men. The woman's hands seemed to have been burned down to mere nubs, and her face appeared to have melted or sagged to the point that it was unnaturally long and deformed. The poor creature's clothes were gone, burned away, revealing skin charred completely black, yet, somehow, still on fire. The wretched creature that had once been a happy, sod-busting wife and mother let out a bone-chilling wail, and then staggered past the men and hurled herself off the bank and into the waters of Elm Creek. The criminal mob followed to the point from which she had launched herself into the black water, but saw no trace of her. Her body, it is said, was never found. Since that terrible night, travelers who tarry too long on or near the bridge have occasionally reported terrifying run-ins with the Donkey Lady. Horrible screeching and screaming is reported from time to time, emanating from under the bridge or the surrounding woods. Some have claimed a malevolent creature of some kind has dropped onto the hood or roof of their car, screamed loudly, and scratched and clawed at the windows in an attempt to get at them. Photos exist of damage allegedly done to vehicles by the Donkey Lady. It is said that if you park on the bridge, shut off your headlights, and wait you will almost certainly encounter something truly terrifying. The bridge itself attracts many visitors looking to catch a glimpse of the storied ghost. However, you may notice a marked difference in the area's ambiance and general atmosphere between daytime and nighttime. During the bright light of day, the bridge looks like many others with guard railings on both sides, with enough space for cars to drive comfortably across. However, this all changes when the sun goes down. The charming, lush vegetation seems to close in around you, and there is little light to see your surroundings. Many people claim that the area has a heavy feel to the air and that it always feels like someone is watching you. This could be the donkey lady watching and waiting to terrorize those who venture into her territory. It is said that if you drive to the Donkey Lady Bridge and honk your horn while shouting for her, you will be able to summon the being that has haunted the area for decades. If they are particularly brave, ghost hunters and thrill seekers often will honk and yell before exploring the area in search of the entity. Many have witnessed a creature with a donkey's face screaming at them from the window, and later reported car dents shaped like hooves and even broken windshields. Many people hear rushing hoof claps when they visit. One unfortunate group did not have to try so hard for the donkey lady to appear to them. A father and son were camping in a secluded area in the country park. They had just pulled up to their camp, began unloading, and started to set up their tent. All of a sudden, they heard rustling from the brush on the outskirts of the forest. As they watched, the rustling became more aggressive. Neither of them thought much of the incident until they started hearing snorting and snarling. As the noises increased, the father nervously told his son to get into their nearby pickup truck, worried that a creature would soon emerge from its hiding place. The father started to slowly pick up some of their packed items. All the while, the noises and rustling became closer and louder. The father then slowly backed up until he was able to climb into his truck, never taking his eyes off of the brush. As soon as he shut the door, the creature burst out from the trees and ran in front of the truck. Seconds later, it bounded onto the hood, shrieking. While the boy screamed in terror, the dad tried to quickly start the truck, but he was so distracted by the appearance of the creature. The donkey-like human pulled its deformed hands up to punch at the windshield. The man could only describe it later as a wild animal filled with rage and hatred. When they finally escaped and safely reached town, the man began inspecting his truck. The windshield was nearly busted out. Dents covered the entire body of the truck. Scuffs and scrapes littered the fenders, and blood covered the front of the hood. Now I have two stories of apparent run-ins with the donkey lady. The first one. The tales that I have on the donkey lady are not directly related to me. However, they were relayed to me through friends in high school. These are people I have known all of my life and have no reason not to believe them. One night, in late 1987, while at my best friend's house, four fellow companions showed up, bored and looking for something to do. We suggested they visit the Donkey Lady Bridge. This locale was only a short drive from the house. They agreed and were soon driving out of sight. About 6 hours later, their vehicle returned to our driveway with only one occupant. Assuming he had taken the girls home and was ready to party in San Antonio, we went out anxious to greet him. What we found at the car was something I'll never forget. The windshield was busted, the front dented, and there was what appeared to be blood all over the hood. We immediately ran to the driver's door to see if John, not his actual name, was all right. He was just sitting there, staring out the windshield, with a blank expression on his face. After several minutes of consistent badgering, we finally got him to talk. He told us that he and his friends, Lisa, Terry, and Jill, had arrived at the bridge. They began to honk their horn and call for the donkey lady. According to the legend, this is how you were supposed to get her attention. After about 15 minutes of not seeing anything, they decided to go into the woods and look for her themselves. What happened next was truly unbelievable, and if I hadn't known John all my life and seen the car, I would not have believed it myself. While walking in the woods, John said he got the feeling they were being watched. He immediately stopped and told everyone to be quiet. Looking around and evaluating the situation, he discovered in the distance what appeared to be two eyes staring at them. These eyes seemed to be reflecting from the moonlight and were of a color that he said was indescribable. The girls immediately panicked and began to run back to the car. John was quick to follow, and soon after he turned away, there was a horrible scream from the direction of the eyes. He described it as almost being a cry from an intelligent animal. Too afraid to turn around, he picked up his pace as he ran to the car. When he got there, the girls were already inside screaming at him to get in and leave. As he was trying to find his keys, he heard the sounds of what seemed to be a horse running in their direction. Starting the car, he slammed it into gear and put the pedal to the floor. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the road in front of them. Too afraid to stop, John collided with the figure. It hit the hood of the car and rolled over the roof. Looking in his rearview mirror, he said he thought the figure got up and continued to pursue them. After hearing this and seeing the condition of the car, my friend and I felt this deserved a second look. John told us that he would never return to that bridge again, but if we wanted to risk our lives, to go right ahead. Grabbing 2 flashlights and a pair of shotguns, that was the biggest weapon Steve's father had, we jumped to the pickup and made way for the bridge. As we drew closer, we slowed down and turned on the many off-road lights my truck had. These lit the road and the woods to the side of us as if it were daytime, giving us an outstanding view of the bridge. As we approached, the first thing we noticed as the bridge drew closer was a large amount of blood on the road. However, this was the only evidence we could find of the incident described by John. Upon our investigation of the woods on foot, we discovered what seemed to be several tracks of a small horse leading to the road. After several hours of looking and not finding anything else, we returned to the house. By this time, John had already found his way home, and we laid in bed, too excited to sleep. To this day, none of the people involved in this story have returned to the bridge. Did John actually see and strike the donkey lady that night? Or was it merely a stray pony startled by their presence? All I know is that something was there that night, and it did scare our friends half to death. Now, this is the second story. I had an incident similar to the previous one submitted. One weekend in 1989, some friends and I were driving around in the 1973 Impala one of them owned. As we usually did, we were showing the younger cousins of the driver, Todd, around. They had turned 13 that year and were being inducted. We decided to drive to Donkey Lady Bridge, partly since we had never been there, and partly to give them a good scare. Any child, particularly the southeast side ones that have grown up in San Antonio, knows about the Donkey Lady. There was even a phone number you could call to hear her, so they laughed and agreed to the idea. We drove out to the bridge, turning off the headlights before we were actually on it. It is very eerie out there at night. It was much more because of the almost full moon barely lighting the bridge. Todd started to slowly advance across the bridge when a figure appeared seemingly from nowhere in the middle of it. He stopped the car and we whispered speculations as to who or what it was. We were not expecting to see anything, much less this. Todd placed the car in gear again and, honking his horn, slowly inched his way toward the figure, which promptly vanished. The car was stopped again, and this made us shut up. Todd sat listening to our suggestions to back up or gun the car to the other side when something landed on the hood of the car. Everyone screamed, and Todd slammed the car into reverse and floored it. The dark figure rolled from the hood, and Todd didn't stop until we had reached the main road and made our way to the Denny's on Southwest Military. Getting out, we all stared at the hood, which now sported two very deep dents in it. No one had an explanation of just where the figure had dropped from to make those. We went inside to eat, but just decided to call it a night. Todd took his car to a body shop the next day and had to replace the entire hood. The dents were too deep to pound out. Incidentally, I was 17 when this happened and am 30 today, and I have never been back out there. Did you know there is a local phone number you can even call to hear the legendary Donkey Lady? Each night from midnight October 31st through November 6th, there is a new 45-second message awaiting the caller. People have called the hotline and heard creepy sounds or even spoken to her if she surprisingly picks up the phone. Although you cannot access the bridge by car anymore, it may be visited on foot by walking the Medina River Greenway Park Trail. Conveniently, there is parking located at the old Applewhite trailhead from this trail. The trail is quite beautiful and may be safely walked during the daylight hours. It is not recommended that visits be made at night. Have you visited Donkey Lady Bridge? What was your experience? And would you go there if you had the chance? Would you dare venture into the paranormal realm of the Donkey Lady? That brings me to the end of this episode. Thanks for listening to the D.E.A.D podcast. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at the D.E.A.D podcast. Also, feel free to send in your stories, episode suggestions, or feedback at the deadpodcast1@gmail.com, or send me a DM on Instagram. If you enjoyed this show, please rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you are listening on, and be sure to come back next week for my next episode.